Sources within international legal authorities asserted that the warrant was issued in relation to economic crimes and putative violations of human rights that extend far beyond the borders of South Africa. The accusations are not restricted to internal mismanagement or corruption, but rather point towards a web of clandestine international financial flows, untaxed shore assets, and systemic abuse of public authority. For years, global monitors and legal rights organizations have been quietly constructing this case, assembling documents, following digital trails of money, and taping testimony from people who say they have first-hand information about how state funds were diverted for political or personal ends. Interestingly, while South African media has been restrained, some have accused it of deliberately keeping quiet about reporting on this story. Overseas newspapers and global justice groups have been sniffing around for a long time. Legal analysts observed that the foundation for this arrest warrant was not established in a matter of one night. Rather, it is an expression of years of diligent investigation, behind-the-scenes politicking in international legal circles and collaboration across several jurisdictions. The mere fact that a warrant of this kind has allegedly been issued means the evidence gathered might be substantial, even potentially incriminatory. While no formal statements have been issued by Interpol or the International Criminal Court, diplomatic rumors paint a much more ominous picture. Sources say Pretoria has already received the warrant and that it has been followed by an inside storm of negotiations. Legal pressure is reportedly building on the government of South Africa, with threats that refusal to comply may result in targeted sanctions, assets abroad frozen, or travel bans imposed on top officials. For a nation that depends so intensely upon international trade and international legitimacy, this would be disastrous. If you believe that the African National Congress was already weakened by corruption scandals and leadership struggles, this new one may be the coup de grace of its internal unity. Factions within the ANC are sharply divided on how to proceed, insiders say. Ramaphosa supporters claim that the warrant constitutes a malicious assault on South African sovereignty backed by angry foreign powers that seek to destabilize the country in the run-up to the 2026 general elections. They portray it as a geopolitical attack similar to the kind witnessed in other regions of the Third World where Western powers have been accused of mounting local politics. On the other side, however, there is a growing group within the ANC, many of whom are longtime critics of Ramaphosa, regard this as their big moment. For them, the warrant is not a threat, but an offer, an opportunity to undermine, if not actually bring down the president. They have long seen as detached from his people and compromised to their enemies. There are those who have reportedly even toasted in secret, murmuring that international law may finally prevail where domestic party politics did not. And then there are the rumors of treachery. One-time friends who, reading the political winds, might now agree to testify against him. If not in a Dutch courtroom in the HEG, then surely in the court of public opinion. ANC stalwarts such as Gad Mantesh and Lind Kulu are said to have held several closed-door meetings. Their aim, insiders say, is two-pronged: to contain the short-term political blowback and to position themselves strategically as possible rescuers of a party on the verge of collapse. It is high-stakes political chess, and the board is the ANC while the spoils are the future of South Africa. Every step counts and the board itself is shaking in response to the pressure. But perhaps even more indicative of the situation than cracks within the party are the quietness of South Africa's international allies. Severely outspoken governments such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and various EU member states have yet to speak out thus far. No condemnations, no denials, no public backing of Ramaphosa or the South African government. For a president who has regularly presented himself as a world statesman and weaver of the First and Third Worlds, this silence must be ear-splitting. Diplomatic sources indicate the silence could be indicative of delicate behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Western powers might be quietly juggling their economic and geopolitical agendas, not wanting to risk costly trade agreements or strategic partnerships as they await to see how political theater unfolds in South Africa. But in diplomatic circles, silence is seldom neutral. It can say more than words. It can suggest that discussions of sanctions, travel restrictions, or even types of soft international ostracism are already afoot in back rooms. South Africa's position in influential groups such as the African Union and BRICS might also be at stake. Friends within these blocs might be compelled to reevaluate their relationships based on Pretoria's response to the crisis. Will the administration dig in and defy global pressure, possibly further alienating itself? Or will it yield to legal and diplomatic pressure, putting itself at risk of falling apart internally? And that brings us to the million-rand question. Can a sitting president legally be arrested by international forces? In theory, yes. But the facts are far more complex. International law, diplomatic immunity, and the doctrine of national sovereignty all come into play in instances such as this one. Arresting a sitting head of state would take extraordinary political will and a particular combination of circumstances. Nevertheless, history has established that even the mighty leaders are not out of reach for justice. Omar al-Bashir of Sudan was chased by the International Criminal Court for years despite brutal defiance. Slobodan Milosevic, once inviolate as president of Serbia, later ended up in the HEG. Ramaphosa's future could ultimately hinge on a mix of things. Internal pressure from the people of South Africa, international diplomacy, and most importantly the desire of the ANC itself. Should the party decide to turn against him, resignation or even forced removal could become unavoidable. Officially, the presidency has declined comment in light of continuing legal proceedings and the absence of official paperwork. Behind the scenes, however, a whirlwind of activity is said to be underway. Emergency consultations with attorneys, senior ANC leaders, and even with military officers have reportedly been convened. Speculation abounds that there are contingency plans such as Ramaphosa temporarily resigning to face the charges. Such an action would be uncharted in South Africa's democratic experience and would be the cause of seismic shock within its political landscape. The effect on the ANC's capability to campaign well during the next elections should not be underestimated. A president entangled in international lawsuits is a liability for both voters and funders alike. Already rumors of a shadow succession plan are making rounds in political circles. Would-be successors are rumored to be jockeying in the background, poised to pounce should the current leader stumble. Regardless of whether Ramaphosa is guilty or not guilty of the charges, one thing is certain. This global arrest warrant is a watershed moment in South African politics.